The rain came down in sheets that Thursday night in South Boston, the kind of relentless November downpour that turned the streets into mirrors reflecting the neon signs and streetlights. Inside O'Malley's bar, the weather was just another backdrop to another slow shift, the kind Lara Chen had worked 100 times before. At 25, Lara had the kind of face that could shift between approachable and intimidating, depending on what the situation required. Tonight, with her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and her black O'Malley's t-shirt slightly wrinkled from a double shift, she looked exactly like what she was. Exhausted. The kind of tired that went deeper than missing sleep. The kind that came from working 60-hour weeks and still watching the bills pile up higher than the paychecks. "Another round, Jimmy?" Lara called across the bar to one of the regulars, a construction worker in his 50s who'd been nursing the same beer for the past hour. The place was nearly empty. Just Jimmy, two college students pretending they weren't on a terrible first date in the corner booth, and old Mrs. Kowalski at the end of the bar, who came in every Thursday to drink one glass of white wine and remember her late husband. "Nah, I'm good, Lara. Got an early start tomorrow," Jimmy replied, sliding a 20 across the scarred wooden bar top. "Keep the change, kid. You look like you need it more than me." Lara managed a grateful smile, though the pity behind the generosity stung a little. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her story by now. Father passed away 8 months ago, left behind medical bills that would take years to clear. David Chen had been a firefighter, a hero who'd saved 3 kids from a burning apartment complex before the smoke finally got him. The funeral had been packed. The bills had arrived a week later. "Thanks, Jimmy. Drive safe out there," she said, wiping down the bar with practiced efficiency. The familiar rhythm of the work was almost meditative. Pour, serve, clean, repeat. It kept her hands busy and her mind from wandering to the unopened envelope from the hospital billing department, sitting on her kitchen counter. The bar itself was a South Boston institution, the kind of place that had survived 3 generations of gentrification by simply refusing to change. Dark wood paneling lined the walls, covered in framed photographs of neighborhood kids who'd made it big, a couple of minor league baseball players, a local politician, a chef who'd opened a restaurant in New York. The pool table in the back corner had a tear in the felt that no one bothered to fix. The jukebox still played CDs, though someone had finally convinced Tommy O'Malley, the owner, to install a card reader last year. Lara glanced at the clock above the bottles of premium whiskey that nobody ever ordered. 9:47 p.m. She had another hour and 13 minutes before closing, then the cleanup, the cash out, the walk home through streets that got a little more dangerous with each passing month. Her friend Jess kept telling her to drive, but parking in Southie cost almost as much as her studio apartment, and her beat-up Honda had finally given up the ghost 3 weeks ago. The front door opened, bringing in a gust of cold wind and rain. A middle-aged couple hurried inside, shaking water from their jackets. "Just made it before the worst of it," the man said cheerfully, guiding his wife toward a booth. "2 hot toddies if you've got them." "Coming right up," Lara responded, already reaching for the whiskey. She was mixing the drinks, the familiar scent of honey and lemon filling the air, when she heard it. A sound from the back of the bar. Not the bathroom, the other direction. The storage room door. Lara's hands paused mid-pour. O'Malley's had 2 entrances, the main door on Dorchester Avenue that everyone used, and the back door that opened into the alley where they kept the dumpsters and received deliveries. That door was supposed to be locked. She'd checked it herself at 6 o'clock, just like Tommy had taught her. Another sound. Definite this time. Something. Someone. Moving. "Be right back," Lara told the couple, forcing her voice to stay light. She grabbed her phone from her back pocket, thumb hovering over the emergency call button as she moved toward the back hallway. The storage room door was slightly ajar, a thin line of darkness visible where it should have been firmly closed. Every horror movie she'd ever watched played through her mind in rapid succession. Every news story about break-ins in the neighborhood. Every warning her father had given her about working late shifts in this part of town. But Lara Chen hadn't survived the past 8 months by being scared of shadows. She pushed the door open, reaching for the light switch. What she saw made her breath catch. A man was collapsed against the wall just inside the door, one hand pressed against his left shoulder, his face pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. He was older than her, maybe 40, with dark hair wet from the rain and several days' worth of stubble on his jaw. His clothes, dark pants, a button-down shirt that might have been blue or gray before it got soaked, were plastered to his frame, and there was something wrong with his shoulder, something that made his entire left side seem wrong. The way he held himself, the way his hand pressed there with desperate pressure. He looked up at her with eyes that were starting to lose focus, and for a moment, they just stared at each other. "Please," he whispered, and his voice had the quality of someone who'd been running for a long time. "Please, I need a minute. Just 1 minute." Lara's mind raced through the possibilities. He was injured. He'd come through the back door, which meant he'd either picked the lock or found it somehow compromised. He was alone, and he looked terrified. "You need a hospital," Lara said, keeping her voice low but firm. "That shoulder—" "No." The word came out sharp, almost panicked. He tried to push himself more upright against the wall and immediately regretted it, a sound of pain escaping through clenched teeth. "No hospitals, no police, please, I just need—" He swayed, and Lara found herself moving forward instinctively, reaching out to steady him even as every logical part of her brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. Okay, don't move," she said, already making decisions she hadn't consciously processed yet. "Can you walk? Like, at all?" He nodded, though the gesture looked like it cost him significant effort. "The bar," Lara continued, her thoughts moving faster than her words. "Behind the counter there's space, can you make it that far?" "Why are you—" he started, confusion mixing with the pain in his expression. "Because I'm apparently an idiot," Lara muttered, "and because you look like you're about to pass out in my storage room, which is not how I want to end this shift. Come on." She looped his right arm around her shoulders, taking as much of his weight as she could manage. He was heavier than he looked, solid muscle under the wet clothes, and each step seemed to require negotiation with a body that was rapidly giving up. They moved through the narrow hallway, Lara's mind already spinning through the logistics. The couple who'd ordered hot toddies would be wondering where their drinks were. She needed to get this stranger hidden, needed to figure out what she was going to do, They emerged from the hallway and Lara quickly scanned the bar. The couple was absorbed in conversation, not paying attention. The college students were arguing in hushed tones. Mrs. Kowalski had her eyes closed, maybe dozing, maybe just enjoying the warmth. Nobody was looking their way. "Behind here," Lara whispered, guiding the stranger behind the long wooden bar. There was a space at the far end, where they kept backup supplies. Extra towels, boxes of cocktail napkins, cleaning supplies. She pulled out the rolling cart they used for restocking, creating a makeshift barrier. "Get down. Stay quiet. Don't move unless I tell you to." He lowered himself with obvious difficulty, settling into the cramped space between the cart and the back cabinet. Up close, Lara could see details she'd missed before, the way his hands shook slightly, not just from pain but from something else. Fear, maybe. Or cold. The rain had soaked him completely. "Here." She grabbed a stack of clean bar towels from the shelf, pressing them into his hands. "For your shoulder. Apply pressure. I need to go take care of customers. Don't move." He looked up at her and there was something in his eyes that Lara couldn't quite read. Gratitude, yes, but also surprise. Like he couldn't quite believe she was helping him. "Thank you," he managed. "You don't understand what—" "And I don't want to." Lara cut him off, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not right now, just stay hidden and stay quiet." She pulled the cart into position, blocking him from view, and grabbed a box of cocktail napkins to place on top, making it look like this had always been the arrangement. Then she took a deep breath, smoothed down her t-shirt, and stepped back into the main bar area with what she hoped was a convincing smile. "Sorry about that," she called to the couple, moving to finish their hot toddies. "Thought I heard something in the back. Probably just the wind." "This weather," the woman commiserated, accepting her steaming mug. "It's supposed to get worse before it gets better." Lara nodded, wiping down the bar top with mechanical precision, hyper-aware of every sound from the hidden space behind her. Her heart was pounding so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. What had she just done? She'd hidden a stranger, an injured stranger who was clearly running from something in her workplace. If Tommy found out, she'd be fired. If it was something serious, if he was dangerous, if she'd just made the worst decision of her life. But there had been something in his eyes. Something that reminded her of her father in those last months. That same desperate determination to survive. And Lara had spent 8 months wishing someone had done more, had intervened sooner, had noticed the signs before it was too late. The front door opened again. 3 men walked in, and immediately Lara knew these were not the usual O'Malley's crowd. The first thing she noticed was the suits. Expensive ones. The kind that probably cost more than she made in 2 months. Dark, perfectly tailored, somehow managing to look pristine despite the rain. The second thing she noticed was the way they moved. Controlled, purposeful, like predators scanning new territory. The man in front was maybe late 30s with dark hair styled back from a sharp, angular face. Handsome in a cold sort of way, like a statue carved from marble. His eyes swept the bar with calculated precision, taking in every detail, every person, every exit. The two men flanking him were larger, broader, with the kind of presence that suggested they were very good at their jobs, whatever those jobs might be. Every instinct Lara had developed from 25 years of reading people in service industry jobs started screaming. "Evening, gentlemen," she said, keeping her voice professionally friendly despite the ice forming in her stomach. "What can I get you?" The man in front approached the bar, his movements precise and economical. Up close, she could see his eyes were a dark brown, almost black in the dim lighting of O'Malley's. He didn't sit down, just placed both hands on the bar top and fixed her with a stare that felt like it could see straight through her. "We're looking for someone," he said, and his voice was surprisingly soft, almost gentle. Somehow that made it more threatening. A man, 40 years old, about 6 feet tall, dark hair. He would have come through here in the last hour, injured. Lara's mind went completely blank for a fraction of a second, then kicked into overdrive. This was it. This was what the stranger had been running from. These men, this cold-eyed man in the expensive suit, they were the reason he'd broken into her storage room, why he'd begged her not to call the police. She'd made her choice when she hit him. Now she had to live with it. "Haven't seen anyone like that," Lara said, meeting his gaze directly. Her years of dealing with difficult customers, with entitled college kids and aggressive drunks, kicked in. The key was to seem helpful without actually being helpful, concerned without being suspicious. "It's been pretty quiet tonight. Just regulars mostly. Weather's keeping people home." The man studied her face for what felt like an eternity. Lara forced herself not to look away, not to fidget, not to show any of the terror coursing through her veins. Behind her, just a few feet away, hidden behind a rolling cart and a box of cocktail napkins, was the man they were looking for. "You sure about that?" one of the other men asked, his voice carrying a hint of skepticism. "Like I said," Lara replied, allowing a hint of irritation to creep into her tone, the kind of annoyance any waitress would feel at having her word questioned. "It's been dead all night. You're welcome to look around if you want. Bathrooms through that door, storage is back there. But I've been at this bar for 4 hours straight, and I think I'd notice if someone matching that description came in." "Injured, you said?" "Left shoulder," the cold-eyed man said, still watching her with unnerving intensity. "There would have been visible signs. He wouldn't have been able to hide it." Lara shook her head, reaching for a glass and starting to polish it. Busy work, the universal language of a bartender who has things to do. "Nothing like that tonight. Want me to check with Tommy? He's the owner. Might have seen something earlier." "No," the man said quickly. Too quickly. "That won't be necessary." Interesting, Lara thought. They don't want official attention either. Whatever this is about, it's not something they want going through proper channels. The man pulled out his phone, glanced at the screen, then back at Lara. His expression hadn't changed, but there was something in his eyes now. Calculation, reevaluation. "If you do see him," he said slowly, "don't approach him. He's dangerous. Call this number immediately." He placed a business card on the bar. It was plain white with nothing but a phone number embossed on it. No name, no company, nothing else. "Dangerous how?" Lara asked, picking up the card with what she hoped looked like appropriate concern. "Should I be worried? Should I tell Tommy to lock the back door or something?" "The back door?" The man's focus sharpened. "Is there a problem with your back door?" Lara felt the trap closing and sidestepped instinctively. "No, it's fine. I checked it a few hours ago like I always do. I just meant, if there's someone dangerous running around the neighborhood, we should probably be more careful. This area is not exactly the safest, The man nodded slowly, though his eyes never left her face. "Your name?" "Lara. Lara Chen. Lara Chen," he repeated as if memorizing it. "You work here often?" 6 days a week, unfortunately," Lara said, injecting a note of weary humor into her voice. "Living the dream. And you're certain you haven't seen anyone unusual tonight? Think carefully." There was a weight to that last instruction, a subtle threat wrapped in polite words. Lara understood immediately that this was her chance to change her story, to tell the truth, to save herself from whatever consequences came with lying to these men. She thought about the stranger behind the bar, about the desperation in his eyes, About her father who'd always taught her that sometimes doing the right thing meant taking a risk. "I'm certain," she said firmly. "If I see anything, I'll call that number. Promise." The man held her gaze for another long moment, then finally nodded. "See that you do." He turned to leave, his companions following, but paused at the door. Without looking back, he said, "You seem like a smart girl, Lara-chan. Smart enough to know that some people aren't worth protecting. Remember that." Then they were gone, the door closing behind them with a soft click that somehow felt more ominous than if they'd slammed it. Lara stood perfectly still for a count of 10, forcing herself to breathe normally, to not look toward the hidden space behind the bar, to not do anything that might seem suspicious if those men were watching through the window. The couple at the booth was finishing their drinks, blissfully unaware of what had just transpired. The college students were gathering their coats, their terrible date apparently concluded. Mrs. Kowalski was counting out exact change for her wine. "Last call, folks," Lara announced, her voice only slightly strained. "We're closing up in about 20 minutes. She moved through the familiar routine on autopilot, collecting empty glasses, wiping down tables, starting the closing procedures. Every movement was calculated to appear normal, to not draw attention, to not suggest that anything unusual was happening. It took 15 minutes for the bar to empty, 15 minutes that felt like 15 hours. Lara locked the front door behind Mrs. Kowalski, flipped the sign to closed, and pulled down the shade. Only then did she allow herself to move back behind the bar. "They're gone," she whispered to the hidden space. "You can—" She pulled back the cart and stopped. The stranger was slumped against the cabinet, eyes closed, his breathing shallow and rapid. The towels she'd given him were pressed against his shoulder, but even in the dim light she could see they were saturated with dark stains. His face was paper white, covered in a sheen of sweat despite the cool temperature. "Hey," Lara said urgently, kneeling beside him. "Hey, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open, struggling to focus on her face. Did they leave?" "Yeah, they left. But you need help. Real help. That shoulder. No hospitals," he repeated, though his voice was weaker now. "Please. You don't understand. Those men, if they find me—" "Who are they?" Lara demanded, keeping her voice low despite the empty bar. "Who were those men? And who are you?" He closed his eyes again, and for a moment she thought he'd passed out. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "My name is Dante, and those men, they won't stop looking. Not ever." "Why? What did you do?" "I tried to leave," Dante said simply, "and nobody leaves." Before Lara could press for more details, before she could process what that meant, she heard it, the sound of a car pulling up outside. Not just any car, an expensive one, by the sound of the engine. She moved to the window, carefully lifting the shade just enough to peer out. The same black sedan that had driven away 10 minutes ago was parked across the street. The man in the expensive suit, the cold-eyed one who'd stared at her like he could read her thoughts, was standing on the sidewalk, phone pressed to his ear. As she watched, he lowered the phone and looked directly at the bar, at her. Even through the window, even across the street and through the rain, Lara could feel the weight of that gaze. He knew. Somehow he knew she'd been lying. "We have a problem," Lara whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. They came back. Behind her, Dante struggled to sit up straighter, pain etched across his features. "Then we're out of time. Lara, that's your name, right? Lara, you need to leave. Right now. Leave through the back. Go home. Forget you ever saw me. This isn't your fight." "It became my fight when I hid you behind my bar," Lara shot back, her mind racing through options and finding all of them terrible. The back door led to an alley, but if they'd come back, they were probably watching that too. The phone was right there, she could call the police, but something told her that might make things worse, not better. And if she abandoned Dante now, left him here injured and helpless, those men would find him. She thought about her father again, about the choice he'd made in that burning building, knowing it might be his last, about the kind of person she wanted to be when faced with impossible decisions. "The office," Lara said suddenly. "There's a small office in the back. Tommy uses it for paperwork. There's a couch in there and the door locks from the inside. Can you make it that far?" "Why are you doing this?" Dante asked, and there was genuine bewilderment in his voice. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Lara met his eyes, seeing the confusion and pain and something else. Maybe hope. Maybe just exhaustion. "My dad used to say that we're defined by what we do when no one's watching, when there's no reward, when it's just us and our conscience. So yeah, maybe this is stupid, maybe I'm going to regret this, but I can't just leave you here. She heard the car door open outside. They were out of time. Come on, Lara said, pulling Dante to his feet with more strength than she knew she had. We move now, or we don't move at all. They stumbled together through the bar, past the pool table with its torn felt, past the jukebox that still played CDs, into the narrow hallway that led to Tommy's cramped office. Every step seemed impossibly loud, every breath echoing off the walls. Lara's entire world had narrowed to this moment, getting this stranger to safety, keeping them both alive, not thinking about what came next. The office door was unlocked, thank God. Lara practically shoved Dante inside, toward the worn leather couch against the far wall. He collapsed onto it with a grunt of pain, and she quickly moved to lock the door behind them. Through the frosted glass window of the office door, she could see movement in the bar. Shadows. Shapes. Someone was inside O'Malley's, and she was certain she'd locked that front door. Lara Chen, a voice called out, and it was the cold-eyed man, his tone conversational, almost friendly. I know you're still here. Your car's in the shop, isn't it? You walk home, which means you're still in this building. Lara's blood turned to ice. He'd done his research. In the 10 minutes since he'd left, he'd somehow found out details about her life, her routines. These weren't ordinary criminals. These were professionals. I'm going to make this very simple, the man continued, his footsteps echoing through the bar as he moved closer to the hallway. You have something that belongs to my associates. Give it back, and you walk away from this. You have my word. But if you make me search for it, if you make this difficult, then we're going to have a much longer conversation, and I don't think you want that. Dante's hand grabbed her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong despite his condition. When she looked down at him, he was already trying to push himself up from the couch. Let me go out there, he whispered. This ends with me anyway. No point in both of us. Shut up, Lara hissed back. Just shut up and let me think. But there was nothing to think about. They were trapped in a small office with one door and no windows. The man outside was getting closer. She could hear his footsteps in the hallway now. In seconds, he'd try the door. In seconds, this would all be over. Lara looked around the office desperately. Tommy's desk covered in invoices and receipts. The filing cabinet in the corner. The old landline phone that probably didn't even work anymore. The couch where Dante sat looking at her with an expression that was part apology, part resignation. The phone. Lara, the man said, and he was right outside the door now. She could see his silhouette through the frosted glass. Last chance. Open the door. Her hand was already moving, grabbing the landline phone off Tommy's desk. Her fingers found the 9, then the 1, then the door handle rattled. Then silence. Interesting choice, the man said finally. Calling the police, that's interesting. And there was something in his voice now, a change in calculation. Because police meant witnesses, meant official reports, meant complications that apparently even these men didn't want. They're on their way, Lara called out, praying her voice didn't shake too badly. I told them there was a break-in. They said 2 minutes, so unless you want to explain to the Boston PD why you're here, I'd suggest you leave. More silence. Then, incredibly, the sound of footsteps retreating. But before the footsteps faded completely, the man's voice came one more time, soft and cold and absolutely certain. This isn't over, Lara Chen. You just chose a side in something you don't understand. And that choice has consequences. Remember that. The front door opened and closed. An engine started, tires on wet pavement fading into the distance. Lara stood frozen, phone still in her hand, not entirely certain what had just happened. She'd bluffed. She hadn't actually called the police, hadn't pressed the final one. But he'd believed her. Or at least he'd decided it wasn't worth the risk to find out. They're gone, she whispered, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. Dante was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, somewhere between awe and horror. You have no idea what you just did, he said quietly. No idea what you just walked into. Then tell me, Lara demanded, her adrenaline finally crashing, leaving her shaky and exhausted and terrified. Tell me who those men were. Tell me why they want you. Tell me what the hell I just risked my life for. Dante closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the couch. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible, heavy with the weight of secrets too long held. That man, he said, the one who was looking for me. His name is Marco Valenti, and 15 years ago, I was his mentor. I was the one who taught him everything he knows about this life. Before I disappeared, before I became nobody. What life? Lara pressed, though part of her already knew the answer. Dante opened his eyes, and there was something ancient in that gaze, something that spoke of choices made and regretted, of paths taken that could never be walked back. The family business, he said simply. And now, because you helped me, because you hid me, because you chose to protect a stranger instead of save yourself, you're part of it too. Outside, the rain continued to fall on South Boston, washing the streets clean of everything except the truth. Lara Chen's ordinary life had just ended, and whatever came next would be anything but ordinary. The clock on Tommy's desk read 10:43 p.m. Less than an hour since Dante had stumbled through that back door. Less than an hour since Lara had made the split-second decision that would change everything. She looked down at the business card still in her hand, the plain white card with nothing but a phone number. Marco Valenti's number, the man who would come back, the man who wouldn't stop. And somewhere in the city, in an expensive car driving through the rain, Marco Valenti was making calculations of his own, about the waitress who'd looked him in the eye and lied so convincingly, about the man he'd been searching for, about blood and loyalty and the debts that could never be repaid. The pieces were all in motion now. The game had begun, and Lara Chen, who'd only wanted to make it through one more shift, who'd only wanted to pay down one more bill, who'd only wanted to honor her father's memory by helping someone in need. She was right at the center of it all. The silence in Tommy's office felt suffocating. Lara stared at the stranger she'd just hidden, her mind struggling to process what she'd done. Outside, rain continued its relentless assault on the windows. I need to see that shoulder, Lara said finally, moving into action mode. Years of caring for her dying father had taught her basic first aid. She pulled out Tommy's meager first aid kit from the desk drawer. Dante tried to remove his wet shirt and gasped in pain. Lara helped him, carefully peeling the fabric away. The injury was severe, a clean puncture wound through the shoulder muscle still seeping despite his attempts to stop it. This happened about 3 hours ago, Dante explained through gritted teeth as Lara cleaned the wound. Been running ever since. You need a real hospital, Lara insisted, applying antiseptic. Can't. The people looking for me. They have connections everywhere. He winced as she pressed gauze against the injury. What's your name? Lara. Lara Chen. Thank you, Lara. You have no idea what you just did for me. Then explain it to me, she said, securing the bandage with medical tape. Who were those men? Why are they after you? Dante leaned back against the couch, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. My name is Dante, Dante Valenti, and that man who came looking for me, Marco Valenti. He's my younger brother. Lara's hands froze. Your brother is hunting you? He doesn't know it's me. I've been dead for 15 years. At least that's what everyone believes. Dante's eyes drifted to the ceiling. I faked my death to escape the family business. Marco was 19 when I left. Now he's the enforcer searching for a fugitive who happens to be his ghost. What kind of family business requires faking your death? Lara asked, though the expensive suits and casual threats had already given her the answer. The kind you can't just quit, Dante said simply. I saw what we were doing, the harm we caused. I couldn't be part of it anymore. But you don't walk away from this life, so I made everyone believe I was gone. Before Lara could respond, she heard the front door of the bar open. Her blood turned to ice. Lara, you still here? Jess. Her best friend's voice cut through the tension like a knife. No, Lara whispered. She's supposed to be in Florida. She bolted from the office, finding Jess standing in the main bar, her bright red coat dripping rain. Jess, what are you doing here? Flight got canceled. Thought I'd surprise you. Why are you so? The front door opened again. 3 men entered. Not Marco's group, but different. Younger, harder looking, with South Boston written all over them. Bar's closed, ladies, one said, his voice carrying unmistakable threat. We were just leaving, Lara said quickly, grabbing Jess's arm. Not so fast. The man stepped closer. We're looking for someone. Older guy, injured. He came through here. You seen him? Haven't seen anyone, Lara lied, her heart pounding. It's been quiet all night. I don't think you're being honest. His hand moved toward his waist. We know he's here. Now you can make this easy. That's enough. Marco Valenti emerged from the back hallway, his presence immediately dominating the space. He must have entered through the rear door, silent as a shadow. Valenti, the South Boston man said warily. Didn't realize this was your territory. Everything in this neighborhood is my territory. Marco's voice was soft, dangerous. And I don't appreciate uninvited guests. You have 30 seconds to leave before I call my uncle and explain why you're operating here without permission. The threat was clear. After tense seconds, the men retreated, leaving with muttered apologies. Marco turned his attention to Jess. Your name? She's not involved, Lara said quickly, stepping between them. I asked her. Jessica Murphy, Jess stammered. Marco studied her with cold calculation. Jessica, you're going to leave. You're going to forget you were here tonight. And you're never going to speak of this to anyone. Because if I hear otherwise, we'll meet again. And that meeting won't be pleasant, understand? Jess nodded frantically, looking at Lara with terrified confusion. Go, Lara urged. Please, I'll be fine. With one last frightened glance, Jess fled into the night. Marco immediately moved toward the office. Stop pretending I know he's here. Lara followed helplessly as Marco pushed open the office door. Dante was standing, one hand braced on the desk, his bandaged shoulder visible through his open shirt. For a long moment, the brothers just stared at each other. Dante? Marco's voice was barely a whisper. Stripped of all control. That's impossible. Hello, Marco, Dante said quietly. It's been a while. You're dead. Marco's hand rose, pointing accusingly. I saw the body. Uncle Sal identified you. You saw what I needed you to see. A homeless man, same height, my ring and wallet planted. Uncle Sal wanted to believe it was me. Marco took another step forward, emotions warring across his face. Why? Why would you let us think you were gone? Let me think. His voice cracked. Do you know what that did to me? I had no choice. It was the only way to leave and keep you safe. Keep me safe? Marco's laugh was bitter. By making me believe my brother was eliminated? If you'd known I was alive, you would have looked for me. Uncle Sal would have noticed. We'd both be liabilities. Marco turned away, his composure cracking. 15 years. 15 years and you never contacted me once? Any contact would have risked both of us. You made that choice for me, Marco said, anger hardening his voice. You chose to disappear while I stayed, built a reputation, became everything you couldn't stomach being. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Good, because you don't deserve it. But Marco didn't leave. He stood there, staring at his brother, the ghost made flesh, with an expression mixing pain, anger, and something that looked like hope. How did they find you? Marco asked finally. Tommy Ricci spotted me in Providence 3 weeks ago. Word got back to Uncle Sal. He's put a price on your head. Half the organizations from here to New York are hunting you. Marco lowered his voice. Uncle Sal thinks you kept records, evidence that could destroy the family. He's right. I have insurance. If anything happens to me, everything goes public. Marco's expression darkened. So for 15 years, you've been walking around with information that could take down our entire family? I've been staying alive the only way I knew how. Marco turned to Lara. And you? Why help him? My father taught me to help people because it's right, not because it's safe. Noble and dangerous. Marco pulled out his phone, showing her screen. Lara Chen, 25, 47 Morrison Street, apartment 3B. Father deceased. 18,000 in medical debt. I know everything about you now. The clinical summary of her life made Lara feel exposed. You can't go back to normal, Marco continued. By helping him, you're part of this now. I understand, Lara said, though her voice trembled. Marco looked between them, his jaw tight. We need to move. This location is compromised. I have somewhere safe. We can regroup there. We? Dante asked. You're my brother. That doesn't stop being true just because you faked your death. Marco's voice was strained. Right now, keeping you alive takes priority. We'll deal with the rest later. He looked at Lara. You're in this, whether you want to be. Come with us and maybe survive, or go home and give it 12 hours before someone finds you. Your choice. If I come, you promise Jess stays safe? As long as she stays silent, your friend is untouched. Lara nodded. Then I'm in. Minutes later, they were in Marco's black sedan, driving through dark Boston streets. Marco took a complex route, constantly checking mirrors. Can I ask you something? Lara said quietly from the passenger seat. You can ask. When you saw him, what did you feel first? Marco was silent, then whispered, relief, for 3 seconds, just relief. Then everything else crashed in. Betrayal, anger, grief, but underneath it all, still that relief. From the back seat, Dante spoke. Marco, there's something else, the real reason I left. What? Remember the Castellano family? Uncle Sal ordered their elimination 15 years ago. They turned informant. The whole family was dealt with, except the daughter, Elena, 17, away at boarding school. Uncle Sal gave you the assignment to finish it. The car slowed. You stopped me. The night before, you took me to that warehouse and I staged my death because I knew Uncle Sal would be too distracted to follow up. In that chaos, I got Elena out. New identity, new life. Safe. Marco pulled over, turning to face his brother. You faked your death to save me from crossing a line I couldn't come back from. You were 19, still had a conscience. I couldn't let you lose that. For 15 years, I thought your death was my fault. Built my entire career trying to prove I was worthy. And it was all you protecting me from a choice I never got to make. Yes, and I'd do it again. Marco gripped the steering wheel. You're an idiot. A self-sacrificing, manipulative, noble idiot. I know, but I'm glad you did it. Because you were right. If I'd gone through with that assignment, Marco's voice broke. I wouldn't be who I am now. So thank you, and never do anything like that again. Deal. Marco pulled back onto the road. We're almost there, 5 more minutes. Lara watched the city recede in the side mirror, feeling like she'd crossed a point of no return. Her old life, the bills, the bar, the simple existence, belonged to yesterday. Ghosts don't bleed, she thought. Ghosts don't come back. But Dante had come back, bleeding and alive, and in doing so, he'd set in motion events that would change all of them forever. The question now was whether any of them would survive those changes. In the darkness of the sedan, 3 lives intersected by chance and choice drove deeper into the Boston night, toward an uncertain future where the past refused to stay buried, and family ties bound tighter than any chains. Marco's safe house turned out to be a converted loft in the Seaport district, all exposed brick and industrial windows, the kind of place that screamed money trying to look understated. Dawn was still hours away, but Lara could feel time pressing against them like a physical weight. Sit, Marco instructed, gesturing to a leather couch while he moved to secure the door with multiple locks. We need to talk, really talk. Dante lowered himself carefully onto the couch, his face pale in the ambient city lights filtering through the windows. Lara remained standing, uncertain of her place in this family confrontation. You should hear this too, Marco said, reading her hesitation. You're part of it now, whether any of us planned for that. He poured 3 glasses of water from the kitchen, handed them out, then positioned himself across from his brother. The space between them felt charged with 15 years of unspoken words. Let me tell you what happened after you died, Marco began, his voice controlled but tight. Uncle Sal promoted me immediately, said the family needed strong leadership, that I had to honor your memory by being twice as capable. I was 19, Marco. 19 and drowning in expectations I didn't understand. Dante's grip tightened on his glass. I never wanted that for you. What you wanted stopped mattering when you faked your death, Marco shot back. What happened was I became exactly what Uncle Sal needed. Efficient, loyal, ruthless when necessary. I built a reputation that made people afraid to even mention the Valenti name without respect. Then why help me now? Dante asked. Why not just complete the assignment? Marco stood, pacing to the window. Because about 5 years ago I started seeing what you must have seen. The cost of this life. The innocent people caught in the crossfire. The families destroyed. And I realized I'd become someone I didn't recognize. He turned back and there was something raw in his expression. I tried to make changes from within, pushed Uncle Sal toward legitimate business ventures, argued against certain operations. But the more I pushed, the more I understood. You can't reform this from the inside. You can only burn it down. What are you saying? Lara asked quietly. I'm saying that for the past 18 months I've been working with the FBI. The confession landed like a physical blow. Dante's eyes widened. Marco, that's the only way forward. Marco interrupted. I've been feeding them information, building a case piece by piece. Names, transactions, operations, everything they need to dismantle the entire network. Uncle Sal will eliminate you if he finds out, Dante said urgently. He already suspects something. That's why when word came that you were alive, he gave me the assignment personally. A test of loyalty. Marco's laugh was bitter. Find my supposedly dead brother and prove I'm still committed to the family by finishing what should have been done 15 years ago. Lara felt the pieces clicking into place. But instead you're protecting him. Which means I've just failed Uncle Sal's test spectacularly, Marco confirmed. By tomorrow morning, he'll know I didn't complete the assignment. And then everything I've been building, the FBI case, the evidence, all of it, will be at risk. Dante struggled to stand, his injured shoulder making the movement awkward. Then you need to distance yourself from me. Immediately. Tell Uncle Sal I got away, that you're still searching. Buy yourself time. It's too late for that. Marco pulled out his phone, showing them a series of text messages. Someone in my crew has been reporting back to Uncle Sal, someone close enough to know my movements. They've already told him I found you at the bar and didn't follow through. Who? Dante demanded. I don't know yet, but it means Uncle Sal knows I've compromised the family, which means he's probably moving against me right now. The weight of this revelation settled over the room. Marco wasn't just helping a fugitive brother. He was committing career-ending betrayal, possibly ending everything else too. The records I kept, Dante said suddenly. The insurance I mentioned. Where is it? Safety deposit box in New York. Why? Because combined with what Marco's gathered for the FBI, we might have enough to take down Uncle Sal and the entire organization. End this once and for all. Marco's expression sharpened with interest. You documented the Castellano situation? The orders, the execution? Everything, including Uncle Sal's direct involvement. Dante met his brother's eyes. I always hoped one day it might be useful. I just never thought I'd live to see it. We need those records, Marco said, already moving toward his laptop. But New York is 5 hours away, and we don't have 5 hours. Uncle Sal will have people at every major transit point by now. Lara had been listening quietly, processing the impossible situation. These brothers, both trying to escape the same toxic legacy in different ways, now trapped by circumstances neither could control. And somehow, she was caught in the middle. What about the FBI? She asked. Can't they help? My contact is Special Agent Chen. No relation, I assume? Marco glanced at Lara, who shook her head. He's been coordinating the investigation, but we're not ready to move. We need more evidence, more connections documented. If we pull the trigger now with incomplete information, Uncle Sal's lawyers will tear it apart. So we're stuck, Dante said flatly. Can't run, can't stay, can't fight back effectively. There might be another way. Marco's fingers flew across his laptop keyboard. Uncle Sal thinks I'm compromised, but he doesn't know about the FBI yet. He thinks this is just about you, about family loyalty versus duty. If we can convince him that I'm handling this situation, that I'm bringing you in personally, you want to use me as bait, Dante finished. I want to use both of us as bait. Arrange a meeting. Uncle Sal, me, you. Somewhere public enough that he can't make a move without consequences. While we're talking, buying time, my FBI contact and his team get to New York, retrieve your records, and move on the rest of the organization. That's incredibly risky, Lara said. Every option is risky at this point, Marco replied. But it's the only play that gets us all out of this alive and puts Uncle Sal away. Dante moved to the window, staring out at the pre-dawn darkness. He'll never agree to meet in a truly public place. He'll choose somewhere he controls. Then we make him think he's in control while actually setting the trap. Marco pulled up a map on his laptop. O'Malley's bar. He knows I have history there. Knows it's my territory. He'll feel confident meeting there. My workplace? Lara interjected. You want to use Tommy's bar as the location for this? It's perfect. Neutral enough that Uncle Sal won't be suspicious, but familiar enough that I can control the variables. We wire it for surveillance, position FBI agents in the surrounding buildings, and document everything that happens. And if it goes wrong? Lara pressed. If he realizes it's a trap? Marco met her eyes steadily. Then at least we go down fighting instead of running. At least we have a chance to end this properly. The silence that followed was heavy with consideration. Lara thought about her father, about the choices he'd made running into that burning building, about how sometimes the right thing and the safe thing weren't the same. I'm in, Dante said finally. If this is our shot, we take it. They both looked at Lara. Why does my opinion matter? She asked. This is your family business. Because we're using your workplace, Marco said. And because you've already risked everything to help us. You deserve a say in what happens next. Lara thought about her apartment on Morrison Street, the bills piling up, the ordinary life she'd been fighting to maintain. That life was gone now, burned away the moment she'd hidden Dante behind her bar. The question was what kind of life she'd build from the ashes. If we do this, she said slowly, we do it right. No one else gets hurt. Not Tommy, not Jess, not innocent people who happen to be in the wrong place. Agreed, Marco said immediately. We schedule it for early morning, before the bar opens. Minimize potential collateral damage. And if I help you, Lara continued, I want something in return. Name it. My father's medical debt. $18,000. When this is over, if we survive, I want it cleared. Marco didn't hesitate. Done. You help us take down Uncle Sal, I'll make sure every bill you have disappears. Then I'm in too. Marco began typing rapidly, sending encrypted messages. I'm contacting Special Agent Chen now. We'll need to move fast. Coordinate with the FBI, get the surveillance equipment in place. Convince Uncle Sal to take the meeting. He'll want proof I'm really there, Dante said. He won't come just on your word anymore. Not after I've been dead for 15 years. We'll send him a photo. Current. Time-stamped. Undeniable. He'll also want assurances, Dante added. He'll bring people. Probably demand the meeting happen on his terms even in your territory. Let him have his security theater, Marco said. As long as he shows up and talks, we get what we need on tape. Lara watched the brothers' plan, seeing them work together for perhaps the first time in 15 years. There was a synchronicity to it, an understanding born of shared blood and shared purpose. What about the traitor in your crew? She asked Marco. The one feeding information to Uncle Sal? Marco's expression hardened. I have my suspicions. Tony Marchetti. He's been my second for 3 years, but lately he's been asking too many questions, showing up at odd times. If it's him, he's probably reporting our location right now. Then we're not safe here, Dante said. Nowhere is truly safe, but we have a few hours before Uncle Sal can mobilize effectively. Enough time to set up the trap. The laptop chimed with an incoming message. Marco read it, then nodded. Agent Chen is in. He's scrambling a team to New York for the records and positioning surveillance for the meeting. We're set for 7 a.m. at O'Malley's. 4 hours from now. 4 hours. Lara felt her stomach clench. 4 hours to prepare for a confrontation that could end with all of them arrested, harmed, or worse. We should rest, Marco said, though his tone suggested he didn't expect any of them to actually sleep. It's going to be a long morning. But before anyone could move, headlights swept across the windows. A car pulling up outside the building. Then another. Then a third. Marco moved quickly to the window, staying back from the glass. His face went rigid. We're out of time, he said quietly. Uncle Sal's people are here. Dante pushed himself up from the couch, swaying slightly. How did they find us so fast? Tony must have been tracking my phone. Marco's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. I should have anticipated that. What do we do? Lara asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Marco looked at both of them, calculation happening behind his eyes. Then he made a decision. We don't run. We end this now. He pulled out his phone, dialing. Uncle Sal? It's Marco. I know your people are outside. I know you think I've betrayed the family. But before you do anything you'll regret, I think we should talk. Because I have something you want. Or rather, someone. He listened for a moment, his expression unreadable. Yes, he's here. Your supposedly dead nephew. Very much alive. Another pause. O'Malley's bar, 1 hour. Just you, me, and Dante. No crews, no backup. We settle this like families should. Face to face. Bring whoever you need to feel safe, but keep it small. We all have too much to lose if this gets messy. Marco ended the call and looked at them. He's coming. 1 hour. This is it. The first rays of dawn were beginning to break over Boston, painting the sky in shades of gray and gold. Somewhere in the city, an FBI team was mobilizing. Somewhere else, an organization built on secrets and loyalty was about to face its reckoning. And in a converted loft in the Seaport District, 3 people who'd been thrown together by chance prepared for a confrontation that would determine all of their futures. Lara Chen, who'd just wanted to make it through another shift. Dante Valenti, who'd been running for 15 years. Marco Valenti, who'd been planning his redemption for 5. All of them about to discover whether blood was really thicker than the choices that defined them. The hour before dawn felt like an eternity compressed into minutes. Marco drove them back to O'Malley's bar through streets that were just beginning to stir with early morning life. Delivery trucks, shift workers, the city slowly waking to a day that would change everything. Lara sat in the passenger seat, her phone clutched in her hand, Special Agent Chen's number already programmed in. Marco had been explicit about her role. Stay visible, document everything on her phone, and if things went wrong, she was to hit dial and get out immediately. You don't have to be there, Dante said from the back seat, his voice strained with pain and exhaustion. Marco and I can handle this. We've been over this, Lara replied. surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Uncle Sal knows I'm involved now. If I disappear, it looks suspicious. Besides, it's my workplace. I have every reason to be there early. Marco pulled into the alley behind O'Malley's, parking in the same spot where this had all begun just hours ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since Dante stumbled through that back door. Agent Chen's team is in position, Marco said, checking his phone. Surveillance van across the street, 2 agents in the building next door with long-range audio equipment, and 3 more positioned at the intersections. They'll move in as soon as we have Uncle Sal's confession on tape. And if he doesn't confess? Lara asked. Then we improvise. Marco's jaw was tight. But he will. Uncle Sal's greatest weakness is his pride. He can't resist explaining why he's smarter than everyone else. We just need to give him the opportunity. They entered through the back door, and Lara immediately noticed the changes. Small cameras had been installed in the corners, barely visible unless you knew to look for them. Microphones hidden in the light fixtures. The whole bar had been transformed into a surveillance net in the short time since they'd left. FBI works fast, Dante observed, settling carefully onto a bar stool. His shoulder was clearly causing significant discomfort, but he refused Marco's suggestion to wait in the back office. I need to be visible, Dante insisted. Uncle Sal needs to see me, see that I'm really alive. That's the whole point. Lara moved behind the bar, her hands automatically going through the familiar motions of her morning routine. Checking inventory, wiping down surfaces, starting the coffee maker. The normalcy of these actions felt surreal given what was about to happen. 15 minutes, Marco said, positioning himself near the door. He'd changed into a fresh suit, looking every inch the professional enforcer. But Lara could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes constantly scanned for threats. The coffee maker burbled in the silence. Outside, the sky was shifting from gray to pale blue. The storm from the previous night completely gone. It was going to be a beautiful day, the kind of crisp November morning that made Boston feel alive with possibility. Lara's phone buzzed. A text from Jess. "Are you okay? I've been worried sick. Please tell me you're safe." She wanted to respond, wanted to reassure her best friend that everything was fine, but she couldn't lie, and she couldn't tell the truth. So she typed simply, "I'm okay. I'll explain everything soon. Stay home today, please." "They're here," Marco said quietly. Through the front window, Lara could see 2 black SUVs pulling up to the curb. The vehicles were expensive, understated, the kind that screamed money and power without being ostentatious. The doors opened, and men emerged, spreading out to secure the perimeter. Then Don Salvatore Valenti stepped out of the lead vehicle. Lara had expected someone imposing, someone whose physical presence matched his reputation. Instead, Uncle Sal looked almost ordinary. A man in his mid-60s, average height, wearing a wool coat over a cardigan and slacks. He could have been anyone's grandfather heading out for morning coffee. But his eyes, even from a distance, Lara could see the calculation in those eyes, the sharp intelligence that had built and maintained a criminal organization for decades. Uncle Sal entered O'Malley's alone, leaving his security detail outside. The bell above the door chimed cheerfully, absurdly normal. "Marco," he said, his voice carrying a slight Italian accent. "Thank you for calling. I was beginning to worry about you." "Uncle Sal?" Marco's tone was respectful but guarded. "Thanks for coming." Uncle Sal's gaze swept the bar, taking in every detail. Lara behind the counter, the early morning setup, the shadows in the corners. His eyes lingered on Dante, and Lara saw the moment recognition hit. "Madonna Santa," he breathed, crossing himself instinctively. "It's really you." Dante stood slowly, facing the man who'd been like a father to both brothers. "Hello, Uncle Sal. Been a long time. 15 years. Uncle Sal moved closer, circling Dante like a predator examining prey. 15 years we mourned you. Built a memorial. Your mother cried herself to sleep for months. And all this time you were alive. I had my reasons. I'm sure you did." Uncle Sal's voice was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made it more menacing. "The question is whether those reasons are worth what comes next." Marco stepped forward, positioning himself between his uncle and brother. "That's why we're here, to talk about what comes next." Uncle Sal turned his attention to Marco, and his expression shifted to something like disappointment. "You failed your assignment, nephew. When I heard Dante was alive, I gave you a simple task. Find him, deal with the situation, prove your loyalty. Instead, you protect him. You bring him to a meeting. You compromise everything we've built." "I didn't compromise anything," Marco said evenly. "I'm trying to save it." By harboring a traitor. By choosing sentiment over duty. Uncle Sal shook his head. I raised you better than this. You raised us both, Dante interjected. And you taught us that family comes first. Always. So which is it, Uncle Sal? Is Marco a traitor for protecting his brother, or is he following the values you instilled in us? It was a clever argument, Lara realized, using Uncle Sal's own philosophy against him. But the old man wasn't fooled. Don't play word games with me, boy. You left. You chose to walk away from this family, to fake your death, to abandon your responsibilities. That makes you the traitor, not Marco. I left because I couldn't be part of what we were doing anymore, Dante said, his voice rising slightly. The harm we caused, the lives we destroyed, I couldn't carry that weight. So you gave that weight to your brother instead? Uncle Sal's laugh was harsh. Very noble, Dante. Leave Marco to handle everything while you run off to play construction worker in whatever city would hide you. Do you have any idea what he's endured because of your choice? That's not fair, Marco said. But Uncle Sal cut him off. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I'll tell you what's fair. Fair is honoring your commitments. Fair is protecting your family, not running from it. Fair is understanding that sometimes we do difficult things because they need to be done. He moved to the bar, gesturing for Lara to pour him coffee. She did so with shaking hands, watching as he added cream with the casual ease of someone completely comfortable in any situation. And you, Uncle Sal said, fixing Lara with his gaze. The waitress who started all of this. Lara Chen, isn't it? Tell me, what makes a young woman risk everything for a stranger? Lara met his eyes, remembering her father, remembering every lesson about courage and doing what's right. My father taught me that we're defined by our choices when no one's watching. When there's no reward, no recognition, just us and our conscience. Your father was a firefighter, I understand. Died saving others. Uncle Sal sipped his coffee thoughtfully. A hero. Tell me, do you think he'd be proud of the choices you've made tonight? Getting involved in things you don't understand, putting yourself in danger for people you just met? The question hit harder than Lara expected. Would her father be proud? Or would he be disappointed that she'd risked her life so recklessly? I think he'd understand that sometimes helping people is worth the risk, she said finally, even when it's complicated, even when it's dangerous. Uncle Sal nodded slowly. Idealistic, admirable, also incredibly naive. He set down his coffee cup with deliberate precision. But we're not here to discuss philosophy. We're here because my organization has a problem, and that problem is standing in this bar. He looked at Dante. You have records. Documents from your time with the family. Don't deny it. I know you too well. You always were the careful one, the planner. So here's my proposition. Give me those records. Agree to disappear permanently. And I mean truly disappear this time. Somewhere I can verify. And I'll let both you and Marco walk away from this. Clean break. No consequences. And if we refuse, Marco asked, then I make the difficult decision that should have been made 15 years ago. Uncle Sal's voice remained calm, conversational. I eliminate the threat to my family. Both threats, since you've proven your loyalty is compromised. The casual way he discussed ending their lives made Lara's blood run cold. This was what Dante had fled from, what Marco had been fighting against. This cold calculation that reduced human lives to organizational problems to be solved. You're not going to do that, Marco said quietly. No? Uncle Sal raised an eyebrow. What makes you so certain? Because we're in a public place. Because your security detail is outside and you're in here alone. Because despite everything, you still care about us. About family. If you really wanted us gone, you would have handled this differently. Perhaps. Uncle Sal's expression was unreadable. Or perhaps I'm giving you one last chance to do the right thing. To honor your family name before it's too late. Dante moved forward, his shoulder protesting but his voice steady. You want to talk about the family name? Let's talk about Elena Castellano. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Uncle Sal's face hardened. Careful, Dante. She was 17, Dante continued undeterred. Her entire family had been eliminated because you suspected they were going to cooperate with authorities. But Elena was away at boarding school, innocent. And you ordered Marco, 19-year-old Marco, to finish the job, to end a teenager's life because of who her parents were. That was business, Uncle Sal said flatly. Necessary to protect. It was wrong, Marco interrupted, his voice sharp, and Dante knew it. That's why he faked his death. To save me from becoming someone who could do something like that. To give Elena time to disappear. Uncle Sal's eyes narrowed dangerously. You helped her escape? I did, Dante confirmed. Changed her identity. Got her out of the country. She's been safe for 15 years, living a normal life far away from all of this. Then you didn't just betray the family, Uncle Sal said, his calm demeanor cracking slightly. You actively interfered with direct orders. You undermined my authority. You put the entire organization at risk. I saved an innocent girl's life, Dante shot back. And I saved my brother's soul. If that's betrayal, then I'm guilty as charged. Uncle Sal stood, his hand moving toward his coat pocket. Marco tensed, but the old man simply pulled out his phone. You think you're so righteous, Uncle Sal said, his voice low and dangerous. You think you can judge me? Judge the decisions I've made to keep this family safe and prosperous? Let me tell you something about righteousness, nephew. It's a luxury afforded to those who don't have to make the hard choices. I've spent 40 years building something that provides for dozens of families. That gives people opportunities they'd never have otherwise. And yes, sometimes that requires difficult decisions, choices that keep me awake at night. But I make them because someone has to. He pressed a button on his phone. Tony, come inside. The front door opened, and a man in his 30s entered, one of Marco's crew, Tony Marchetti, the suspected traitor. He looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting between Marco and Uncle Sal. Tony's been very helpful, Uncle Sal continued. He's been keeping me informed about your movements, Marco. Your meetings with people who shouldn't be meeting. Your questions about organization finances. Your sudden interest in legitimate business ventures. Marco's expression hardened. Tony, I trusted you. I'm sorry, Marco, Tony said, and he actually sounded regretful. But Don Salvatore is the head of this family. When he asked for information, I couldn't refuse. You understand that, right? It's about loyalty. Loyalty to what? Marco demanded. To a man? To an organization built on fear and exploitation? Or to what's actually right? Enough, Uncle Sal said. Tony, I brought you in here to witness this. To see what happens when loyalty wavers. Take notes. He turned back to Marco and Dante. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me the location of those records. Tony is going to retrieve them. And then we're going to have a much longer conversation about your futures with the family. And if we refuse? Dante asked. Then everyone in this bar becomes a problem that needs solving. Uncle Sal's tone was matter-of-fact. Including the idealistic waitress who started this mess. Lara felt fear spike through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. Agent Chen and his team were listening to every word. This was exactly the kind of confession they needed. Just a little more, a little longer. You'd really hurt her? Marco asked, gesturing to Lara, an innocent bystander who was just doing her job. There are no innocent bystanders in this life, Uncle Sal replied. There are participants and there are casualties. She chose to participate. By helping someone who needed it. By interfering in family business. Uncle Sal's patience was clearly wearing thin. Now, final answer. Where are the records? Dante and Marco exchanged glances. Some silent communication passing between them. Then Dante spoke. Safety deposit box. First National Bank, New York City. Box number 847. Key is in my old apartment in Hartford, taped behind the bathroom mirror. Uncle Sal smiled coldly. See? That wasn't so difficult. Tony, make note of that information. We'll send someone. Except that's not where they are. Marco interrupted. Uncle Sal's smile faded. What? The records aren't in New York. They're not in Hartford. They're already in the hands of the FBI. Marco pulled out his phone, showing the screen to his uncle. Special Agent David Chen has been coordinating an investigation into your organization for 18 months. I've been helping him. Tonight's meeting was about getting you to confess to ordering the Castellano family situation, which you just did on tape, with multiple witnesses. For the first time since entering the bar, Uncle Sal looked genuinely shocked, then angry, then calculating. It was terrifying to watch emotions flicker across his face so rapidly. Tony, he said quietly, deal with this. But Tony didn't move. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out, not a weapon, but a badge. Special Agent Anthony Marchetti, FBI, Tony said, his voice shifting from apologetic to authoritative. Don Salvatore Valenti, you're under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, and ordering the termination of the Castellano family. You have the right to remain silent. The door burst open and FBI agents flooded into O'Malley's bar. Uncle Sal looked around, finally understanding the trap he'd walked into. His security detail outside was already being apprehended, their vehicles surrounded. "You planned this," he said, looking at Marco with something like respect mixed with betrayal. "All of it. The meeting, the location, even Tony being my informant. It was all part of your operation." 18 months of planning, Marco confirmed, and 15 years of evidence from Dante. Together it's enough to dismantle everything you've built. Uncle Sal was handcuffed, read his rights, but his eyes never left his nephew's. "You've destroyed your own family." "No," Dante said quietly. "We freed ourselves from a family that was destroying us. There's a difference." As agents led Uncle Sal away, Special Agent Chen, a serious-looking man in his 40s, approached Marco. "Good work. We've got everything we need. The recordings from tonight, combined with the documentation your brother provided, will put Salvatore Valenti away for the rest of his life." "What about the rest of the organization?" Marco asked. "Simultaneous raids happening now across 3 states. By noon we'll have arrested over 40 individuals. Your cooperation will be noted in our reports. And witness protection? Already arranged. Both of you will be relocated, new identities, the works. We'll keep you safe." Agent Chen looked at Lara. "That includes you, Ms. Chen. You're a material witness now. We can offer you the same protections." Lara looked around O'Malley's bar, the place where she'd worked for 3 years, where she'd poured drinks and collected tips and tried to build something stable from the wreckage of her father's passing. All of that was over now. This chapter of her life had closed the moment she chose to help a bleeding stranger. "What happens to my debt?" she asked. "The medical bills?" Marco stepped forward. "I meant what I said. That's taken care of. Anonymously, through channels that can't be traced back to any of this. By the end of the week, every bill you have will be marked paid in full." "Why?" Lara asked, tears suddenly burning in her eyes. "Why go to that trouble for me?" "Because you risked everything when you didn't have to," Marco said simply. "Because you helped my brother when no one else would. Because you deserve a fresh start, just like we're getting." Dante moved closer, his injured shoulder clearly protesting but his expression sincere. "You saved my life, Lara. Multiple times. First by hiding me, then by staying through all of this. I'll never forget that. None of us will." Agent Chen cleared his throat. "We need to move. Too many people saw the arrest outside. This neighborhood will be buzzing in minutes. We need to get you all to secure locations for debriefing." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Lara was taken to an FBI field office where she spent hours giving detailed statements about everything that had happened. Agents were respectful, almost gentle, clearly aware that she was a civilian who'd been caught up in something far beyond her experience. Around noon, Special Agent Chen brought her coffee and a sandwich. "You did well in there. Your statement corroborates everything the brothers told us. Plus your phone footage from last night. You got clear shots of several individuals we've been trying to identify for months." "So it's really over?" Lara asked. "The immediate danger, yes. Don Salvatore is in federal custody, and he won't be getting out. The organization is in chaos with most of their leadership arrested. But you should still take the witness protection offer, just to be safe." Lara thought about this. Leave Boston, leave everything she knew. Start over somewhere else with a new name and a new story. It should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something like excitement. "Where would I go?" "That's up to you. We have relocation options across the country. You could stay on the East Coast, move to the Midwest, go all the way to California, wherever you think you'd be happiest." "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take a few days." "But Lara, for what it's worth, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen a lot of witnesses come through this office. Most of them are terrified, traumatized, angry about being dragged into situations they didn't choose. But you have something special. Courage, clarity, moral certainty. Whatever you decide to do, wherever you go, I think you're going to be just fine." 3 days later, Lara stood in her apartment on Morrison Street, packing the few things she wanted to keep. The rest, furniture, kitchen items, all the accumulated stuff of her old life, she was donating to charity. She traveled light now. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Heading west. New lives, new names, new chances. Thank you for giving us that possibility. Stay safe, Lara Chen. You're one of the brave ones. D&M." She smiled, saving the message before deleting it. The brothers had disappeared into witness protection, somewhere in America with new identities. She'd probably never see them again. Somehow that felt right. Their paths had intersected for one impossible night, changed each other fundamentally, and now diverged toward separate futures. Another text. This one from Jess. Still can't believe everything you told me. You're insane. Also a hero. Also, I'm going to miss you so much. Promise you'll find a way to contact me when you can? Promise, Lara typed back. And Jess? Thank you for being my person through all of this. Even when you were terrified, you had my back. I love you. Love you too. Stay safe out there, Chen. There was a knock at her door. When Lara opened it, she found a delivery person holding a large envelope. Lara Chen? That's me. This came for you. Signature required. She signed, took the envelope, and opened it after the delivery person left. Inside was a bank statement showing her account balance, and it had increased by exactly $18,000. Every medical bill, paid. Every debt, cleared. Tucked into the statement was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Fresh starts require clean slates. Thank you for reminding us what courage looks like. Build something beautiful. A friend. Lara sat on her couch, one of the few pieces of furniture still in the apartment, and let herself cry. Not from sadness, not from fear, but from release. From the overwhelming relief of being free from the weight she'd carried for 8 months. From gratitude for the strange, impossible way her life had been transformed. Her father had taught her that we're defined by our choices when no one's watching, but maybe we're also defined by how we handle the consequences of those choices, how we move forward when everything changes. She'd made her choice that night when Dante stumbled into O'Malley's. She'd chosen compassion over safety, action over passivity, courage over fear, and now she got to see where that choice led. The FBI had offered her relocation to Seattle, a fresh city far from Boston, with opportunities she'd never imagined. She'd start with a new name, though she insisted on keeping Chen. That was her father's name, and she wouldn't give that up. A new job, working with a non-profit that helped people transition out of difficult situations. It felt fitting somehow. Full circle. 6 months later, in a coffee shop in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood, Lara sat with her laptop, writing. She'd started documenting her experience. Not for publication, not yet at least, but for herself. To process everything that had happened. To understand how one choice on one rainy night in Boston had completely redirected her life. The coffee shop was busy with the afternoon crowd, and Lara found herself studying the other customers. The businessman in the corner, absorbed in his phone. The young couple arguing quietly by the window. The tired-looking woman ordering multiple espresso shots like her life depended on them. Each of them carrying their own stories, their own struggles, their own impossible choices. Each of them one decision away from a completely different life. Her phone buzzed. An email from her boss at the nonprofit. Great work on the Henderson case. You have real talent for this. Want to grab coffee next week and discuss a promotion? Lara smiled, typing a quick acceptance. Her new life was taking shape, piece by piece. New job, new friends, new purpose. The medical debt was gone. The fear was gone. The weight of her father's passing, while still present, felt different now, less like a burden and more like a reminder to live fully, to choose courageously, to honor his memory through action. She glanced at the news on her laptop screen. A headline caught her eye. Major organized crime conviction. Salvatore Valenti sentenced to life in federal prison. The article detailed the case, the evidence, the dramatic arrest. It mentioned cooperation from unnamed witnesses, documents provided by confidential sources, and the coordinated FBI operation that had dismantled an entire criminal network. But it didn't mention a waitress in a South Boston bar. It didn't mention 2 brothers reunited after 15 years. It didn't mention the impossible choices made in the space between midnight and dawn. Those stories belonged to the people who'd lived them. Private victories, personal redemptions, individual transformations that would never make headlines but mattered more than any news article. Lara closed her laptop, finished her coffee, and stepped out into the Seattle afternoon. The rain here was different from Boston's. Gentler, more consistent, like the city was perpetually in a state of renewal. She walked without particular destination, just enjoying the feeling of being alive, being free, being herself in a way she hadn't been able to before. Somewhere in America, Dante was living under a new name, probably working construction again, building things with his hands and sleeping peacefully for the first time in 15 years. Somewhere else, Marco was maybe teaching or consulting, or finding some other way to use his strategic mind for good, instead of for an organization built on fear. They'd never meet again. They'd never compare notes on their new lives or reminisce about that impossible night. That was part of the agreement, part of staying safe. But they were connected nonetheless. 3 lives that had intersected for one critical moment, changed by choices made when everything hung in balance, bound by the shared understanding that sometimes doing the right thing costs everything and gives you everything back in return. Lara Chen, 25 years old, walked through the streets of her new city with her head held high. Behind her, the past with all its pain and loss. Ahead of her, a future built on courage and compassion, and the fundamental belief that people are worth saving. Her father would have been proud. She was finally proud of herself, and that, she realized, was the fresh start she'd been searching for all along.